Good evening, students. Well, here we are. I know a lot of you are excited. Here we are, week 10. So this is the last lecture as it pertains to emergency management class this semester. I'm going to post one more for week 11, just a short, not a lecture video, but a video on some stuff I want to talk about. I usually do at the end of every class. Since we're not in class, I have to do it here. So we're going to talk about the future of emergency management. What is the future of emergency management? What are the challenges that are facing emergency management? Obviously, they talk about the impacts of climate change and the statistics. Obviously reading them, I was quite alarmed at the amount of damage. It said the total cost in 250 events in 2019 was $1.7 trillion. Trillion with a T. And that's a lot of damage. Where do we come up with that money? Where does we sustain $1.7 trillion in our federal budget going towards disaster-related relief? That's a pretty large amount of money. How do we minimize the property loss and the amount of money that's being spent by the federal government on these disasters? There were $42 billion events in 2018. Should we start spending money now towards climate change relief, dealing with some environmental impacts, programs to look at our future? We as a society look at the change for that, the quick change. What's going to change in a year? For example, how much money am I going to make this year? And how much money am I going to make next year? But what is your long-term plan? So what is our long-term plan? Obviously, to take a look at climate change and see how we can deal with climate-related issues. I think Volvo, I don't remember what year it is, 2025 or 28, they will no longer be using gas combustion vehicles, only electric cars. If you look today, Tesla is going through the roof. Their stock market, their stocks, I wish I would have gotten years ago for their electric vehicles. They're going through the roof. And I think you're going to see more climate change, look at solar panels, things like that. How do we use our water resources for renewable energy, hydroelectric dams, things like that? It's not going away. And we as a society think, well, it's not going to affect me. But I look at it now, I'm not saying I'm old, but, what's the impact on my children going to be? And my grandchildren? I don't have any grandchildren, but maybe someday. So these effects are going to be lasting through our generations. So where do we make a change for the positive? We look at cybersecurity. We saw in the last, since we started class, we saw 3 major significant events in cybersecurity that impacted us at the gas pumps. It affected our national security. So cybersecurity is huge. If you can realize that when I started becoming a police officer in 1996, which really isn't that long ago, 25 years ago, there's no such thing as cybersecurity because we didn't have the internet 25, 27 years ago. So this is ever changing. How do we stay on top of these tech companies that are spending millions and billions of dollars on new technology? How do we as a government keep ourselves from being a victim of cybersecurity? I live up in Duncannon Borough. Water Authority their computer was taken hostage, and they ended up paying out $13,000 to get all of their records back due to cybersecurity. How do we pay government salaries for people to come in and keep people from hacking into our government, our companies spend millions and millions of dollars hiring tech people to keep their computers up and running and keep them from getting hacked. Even here at the police department, the company that we have that deals with our computers, they send us tests out to see if we click on a particular link, and I did it. It was actually a pretty good email. I clicked on it just to see what I thought was one of my officers sending me a email, and boom, I got a, hey, if this would have been a cybersecurity attack, you failed. So needless to say, it is definitely something we need to look forward to. And cybersecurity is going to even get more challenging as we look at the homes that we have, smart homes. People can shut down your electricity, your water in your residence in a matter of minutes, and there you are, simply because they can't hack into my house because I have not an older house, but they would have to shut off the power for me to lose that. How do we enhance mitigation efforts? What are when we talk about mitigation efforts, I like to use the term proactive. What do we do to proactively change pre-disaster problems? How much money do we spend? Flooding is a major issue, forest fires are natural disasters. How do we spend the extra funding to keep those down? Do we buy up the houses around the flood-prone areas? Do we look at putting in dams and other natural barriers to stop the flooding in these areas and to keep it lower? Do we use select cutting for forest fires for mitigation efforts? Do we do more forestry? Now we have people upset at the environment because we're cutting down trees. Do we do more select cutting, getting some of those dead trees out of the forest to keep the forest fires to a minimum? So those are some of the efforts that we're going to use as we move forward, that we look at these mitigation efforts. Do we use better building codes? Do we make people now build above flood, 100-year floodplain? So those efforts could minimize some of that. The National Flood Insurance Program, it was bankrupt because so many people were using this National Flood Insurance Program. Do we raise the premiums on that to where we push people out of those areas? How much money do we put in here? How much money is the insurance companies? If you look at homeowners insurance, it's through the roof. So how do we deal with some of those what do we do to minimize our risk and exposure? Most importantly, how do we deal with in this last part of the entire process? How do we deal with leadership, national leadership, in the emergency management programs? Remember, we're only as good as our managers and the people who supervise us. And that goes for any organizations, whether it's the police department, fire department, whether it's the National Flood Insurance Programs, whether it's the president, no matter what it is, we're only as good as our leaders. So we're looking at how do we change how do we change for the better? How do we train? How do we educate our national leaders in emergency management? I can tell you that the program that I took a few years ago has changed as far as setting up for a local disaster. We're doing changes every day, and we get updates every day of what we do here at a local level, also at a state level, but I'm saying that I see it at a local level, how we change our leadership. Remember, how we respond to incidents, we talked about it before. We respond to an incident, we break it down, how our response was. We attempt to tweak that and look and go back and send our resources back in. And then once the disaster is all over, whatever disaster it is, flood, fire, terrorism, we attempt to analyze what we've learned, and we try to re-educate. And we're only as good as our leaders, and we have to promote institutional change. We can't be stuck in, well, this is the way the program is, here's what we got to do. It's going to change every day. You're going to see, for those of you that want to get into emergency management, whether it's fire department, EMS, police, it changes on a constant basis every day. And we kind of have to change with the times. It's good that we do that so that we can change for the positive. That's all I have in Chapter 10. It was kind of a short chapter because we don't know where the future of emergency management is going. I think we can predict some things, but we have no idea in the future where we're headed in emergency management because it's changing every day. So that's all I have for the book. I'm going to put another video up to cover week 11. It's not going to talk about emergency management. It's going to talk about a couple of things that I always talk about at the end of the semester. Also, I'm going to send out an email in reference to your research papers. They should be posted. I want you to post them on a discussion board, and you're required to read another student's emergency management paper and critique it for the positive. It's not going to do you any good and me any good to read your projects, but it's going to be good for you to read other students' projects so that you can learn from those students. Usually in class, you would normally, if we did have class, you would do a presentation on your paper so that other students could learn what you did a research paper on. So there'll be an email forthcoming. There'll be a week 10 lecture, but as soon as you get your final done next week, you are complete for the semester. If you're running a week or two behind on some homework assignments, I usually give you till like Wednesday. I think the grades have to be in Thursday or Friday. So I'll send an email out reminding you when that stuff, your last days of getting that stuff in. I know some of you have had some personal issues, and I can work with you on that. That's certainly not an issue. But That's all I have for Chapter 10. Have a great night, and week 11 is right around the corner.